On the third anniversary of our marriage, Henry's first love, Sophie, made a high-profile return to the country, setting the internet ablaze with trending searches. Everyone in our social circle waited to see how I, the cuckoo who'd seized another's nest, the mere stand-in, would be swept out the door in tears, weeping like pear blossoms bathed in rain. Henry sat on the sofa, a cigarette pinched between his fingers, his brow deeply furrowed as if carefully choosing how to break the news to me with minimal cruelty. I didn't give him the chance. With a smile, I gently slid a document across the table toward him. Gilded on its cover were 4 bold characters, Resignation Letter. Henry, my voice was as calm as if I were delivering a project report. Sophie is back, and it's time for me to resign from this substitute role. Here are the divorce agreement, the property transfer list, and a marriage work summary from the past 3 years. Please review and sign them. All the 10,000 excuses he had prepared got stuck in his throat. He stared at me in shock, as if he were seeing me for the first time. Henry's surprise lasted only 3 seconds before being replaced by an offended anger. He extinguished his cigarette, picked up the carefully bound resignation report, and looked at me with icy eyes. "Serena, what kind of game are you playing again?" His voice carried the usual, condescending scrutiny, as if anything I did was merely a clumsy tactic of playing hard to get. I maintained a professional smile. "Henry, I'm not playing games. Contractual integrity is my most important professional quality. Our marriage was always a transaction, and now that the premise has changed, I'm taking the initiative to terminate the agreement. It's the most dignified approach." 3 years ago, Henry's corporation faced a broken capital chain and urgently needed a marriage alliance with my family to secure funding. As for me, an illegitimate daughter unloved by both father and mother, my only value lay in this face that bore a 70% resemblance to Sophie's. Henry needed a granddaughter-in-law to appease his gravely ill grandmother, a wife to silence the gossip of the public, and a substitute to remind him of the one he truly longed for. I needed a large sum of money to free my mother from my father's control and take her abroad for proper medical treatment. It was a perfect match. The contract was clear in black and white. The marriage would last for 3 years or automatically terminate upon Sophie's return to the country. I played the role of his wife well, and he paid me my dues. Now, Sophie has returned. It's time for me to clock out. Decent? Henry sneered coldly, tossing the report onto the coffee table with a dull thud. "You just reminded me, Sophie is back, so it's time for you to get out." "What, the money I gave you wasn't enough? Trying to squeeze more out of a divorce?" The disdain in his eyes was almost palpable, stinging like a physical blow. My smile remained unwavering on my face, though inside I felt nothing but numbness. Over these 3 years, I had heard such words far too many times. In his eyes, I, Serena, was nothing but a ruthless, insatiable gold digger. "You've misunderstood," I said, handing him another document. "This is a copy of the prenuptial agreement. The Part 1 signed has already been scanned and filed with my lawyer. I'm leaving with nothing, taking not a single penny. As for the salary you paid me so far, the accounts are all clear and detailed in this work summary. You're welcome to review it any time." My work summary was meticulously detailed, formatted as a PowerPoint presentation spanning 54 pages. It covered everything from his daily dietary preferences and allergen lists to outfit coordination suggestions for various occasions. From reminders of all his important anniversaries to handling strategies for the complex interpersonal relationships within his family, even down to his 100-plus ties, which suit would pair best with each one, I had clearly annotated them all with charts and diagrams. The final page contained my concluding remarks. "Thank you for the platform and opportunities provided over these 3 years. I have successfully fulfilled all KPIs of the wife role. Wishing you and Sophie a harmonious union and early blessings of children." Henry's complexion turned increasingly livid with each page he flipped. He probably expected me to cry, make a scene, or desperately cling to the title of his wife like some shrew. He never could have imagined that I would, in an almost clinical manner, reduce our 3-year marriage into a stark, quantifiable business transaction. "Serena, you're really something else." He forced the words through clenched teeth, his eyes dark with emotions I couldn't decipher. Flattery will get you nowhere. It's just professional integrity. I stood up, smoothing down the dress he'd never really looked at, and said lightly, my personal belongings are already packed. The movers will be here in half an hour. I'll restore everything to how it was before Sophie moves in. Oh, and this too. I took a small USB drive from my bag and placed it on the table. This contains the master access codes for the villa's smart home system, along with the back-end admin passwords for all your electronic devices. I centralized the controls for convenience while managing your daily needs. Now, I'm returning everything to you. With a slight nod, I turned to leave without a trace of hesitation. Stop right there. His voice, thick with suppressed anger, came from behind me. I paused but didn't turn around. Are you that eager to leave? His voice carried a trace of bitterness he himself hadn't noticed. I turned around, finally dropping the professional fake smile, and looked at him calmly. Henry, when an actor wraps up filming, shouldn't they exit the role immediately and move on to the next project? My next project was freedom. With that, I didn't linger any longer and walked straight to the second-floor walk-in closet. I didn't have many belongings, a 28-inch suitcase was enough to pack everything. In 3 years, I'd never added anything here that truly belonged to me. Everything I wore or used was bought by Henry according to Sophie's preferences. I was just an actor wearing costumes, and costumes aren't meant to be taken away. I changed into the white t-shirt and jeans I had arrived in, neatly folding that expensive custom-made gown and placing it on the bed. Half an hour later, the moving company's truck pulled up right on time at the villa's entrance. When I dragged my lone suitcase downstairs, Henry was still sitting on the sofa in the exact same posture as when I'd left him, the cigarette between his fingers now crowned with a long cylinder of ash. He didn't look at me, just kept staring fixedly at the glaring resignation letter on the coffee table. I didn't look at him either, walking straight past him without a sideways glance. The moment I stepped through the villa's gate, the afternoon sunlight bathed me in its warmth. I took a deep breath of air, fragrant with freedom, feeling weightless from head to toe. Goodbye, Henry. Hello, Serena. My new home is a luxury apartment in the city center, located in a bustling area with tight security. I bought it with the money I earned over the past 3 years. Yes, aside from the salary Henry paid me, I also made several highly successful investments using his identity and resources. He knew nothing about it. In his eyes, I was nothing more than a brainless, big-breasted vase who knew only how to cling to him. My best friend Lydia was already waiting for me in the apartment and rushed over to give me a big hug as soon as she saw me. Serena, congratulations on your release from prison. She was even happier than I was. Lydia is one of the top divorce lawyers in the country and the only person who knows the inside story of my marriage. That incredibly harsh prenuptial agreement was meticulously worded and finalized with her help. How was it? Did you meet that legendary white moonlight? She asked gossipily while helping me pack my things. Didn't meet her, just saw photos on the trending searches. She does look quite like me, I said indifferently. If anything, she's the one who resembles you. Lydia curled her lip dismissively. When I first met you 3 years ago, I thought it was a shame someone with your looks and aura didn't enter the entertainment industry. That Sophie at best counts as a budget version of you. I smiled without comment. What did resemblance matter anyway? In Henry's heart, Sophie was the white moonlight, while I was merely a mosquito bloodstain on the wall, a grain of rice stuck to his clothes. Enough about them. I clapped my hands. Your girl is single again, free as a bird. Tonight we're painting the town red, bar or KTV, you choose. Absolutely. Lydia raised both hands in agreement. I'll rally the troops right now. We're drinking till we drop to celebrate Serena's comeback. That night, we booked a private room at the city's most exclusive club. Lydia invited a whole crew of lawyers, finance hotshots, and everyone was wilding out. I shed that demure housewife act and became the real Serena again. Wearing a strappy mini dress with bold makeup, I danced my heart out on the floor. After 3 rounds of drinks, I was slightly tipsy and leaned back on the booth sofa to rest. A handsome man with a charming face approached me with a glass in hand, smiling warmly. "Hey beautiful, here alone?" I raised an eyebrow and was about to reply when a cold voice cut in from nearby. "She's not alone." Following the voice, I saw Henry standing at the private room entrance with a dark expression, his usual group of troublemaker friends behind him. They all wore smirks, clearly here for the drama. Henry's gaze was like 2 ice-cold daggers, piercing straight through me as if he wanted to tear me apart. The poor guy who'd tried to hit on me visibly shrank under Henry's intimidating aura, awkwardly setting down his glass before slinking away. Henry strode over to me with long strides, looking down at me with towering rage in his eyes. "Serena, on the very first day after our divorce, you couldn't wait to go out and fool around?" His voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to instantly silence the entire private room. All eyes turned toward me, filled with scrutiny and curiosity. Lydia wanted to step forward to argue, but I stopped her with a glance. I leisurely swirled the wine glass in my hand, watching the deep red liquid trace graceful arcs along the glass. I lifted my gaze to meet his furious stare, smiling coquettishly yet distantly. "Henry, watch your words. First, we no longer have any ties. What I do in my private life is none of your concern. Second, gathering with friends isn't called fooling around, it's called socializing. Third." I paused, then stood up and leaned close to his ear, whispering in a voice only the 2 of us could hear, "Even if I were fooling around, it's not your place as my ex-husband to interfere. After all, your white moonlight has returned, hasn't she?" His body stiffened instantly. I was satisfied to see the fury in his eyes freeze, replaced by a trace of embarrassment and disbelief. He probably never imagined that I, who had always been obedient and submissive to him, would say something so rebellious. "You." He was so angry he couldn't speak. One of his friends behind him, Zachary, who always loved to mock me, couldn't resist jumping in. "Serena, don't push your luck. The fact that Henry came to see you is already doing you a favor. What do you think you are after the divorce? Just a discarded second-hand woman." The words were extremely offensive. Before I could speak, Lydia had already exploded. "Zachary, watch your mouth. Who are you calling second-hand goods? Our Serena is beautiful and wealthy, the line of men chasing her could stretch all the way to the moon. Unlike some people, clinging to a scheming woman like she's some rare treasure." "Who are you calling a scheming woman?" Another man stepped forward, Quentin, another of Henry's friends and Sophie's #1 supporter. As the argument threatened to escalate, I gently tugged at Lydia. "Arguing with rabid dogs only drags you down to their level," I said calmly. Then, I turned to Henry, the smile completely gone from my face. "Henry, if you're here to catch me in the act, then I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. If you're here to reminisce about old times, I'm sorry, but we don't have any old times worth remembering. If there's nothing else, please leave with your friends and stop disturbing us." I gave them the order to leave. Henry's face turned extremely ugly. He probably had never been treated like this in his life. He stared at me intensely, as if trying to find even the slightest trace of pretense on my face. Yet, he was disappointed. My gaze was as calm as stagnant water, no love, no hatred, not even resentment. To me, he was truly just a former boss with whom I'd signed a 3-year contract. In the end, he said nothing, only gave me a deep, complex look that I couldn't interpret. Then he turned and left the private room with his equally stunned friends. The room returned to its noisy state, but the atmosphere was noticeably awkward. Lydia looked at me with concern. "Serena, are you all right?" I shook my head, finished the last sip of wine in my glass, and smiled. "I'm fine, better than ever." Yes, better than ever. Now that I'd broken free from the shackles of being Henry's wife, I'd discovered how vast and boundless the world outside truly is. The next day, I woke up with a terrible hangover, my head pounding. As soon as I picked up my phone, I saw Henry's name flashing on the screen. Without hesitation, I hung up and then blocked him, all in one smooth motion. Not long after, an unknown number called again. I answered, and Henry's voice, barely containing his anger, came through. "Serena, how dare you block me? Henry, we're already divorced. As a decent ex, you should lie quietly in each other's contact list like the dead." "Blocking is the most basic respect," I replied flatly. "You." He seemed utterly infuriated, taking a deep breath before continuing. "Grandma wants to see you." Henry's grandmother was the only one who genuinely treated me well. Her eyesight was poor, and she always mistook me for Sophie. Over these 3 years, holding my hand and calling me Sophie, she gave me the long-lost warmth of a grandparent's love. This was the only part of the whole deal that brought me any warmth. I hesitated for a moment. "How is she doing?" "Not well." Henry's voice grew heavy. "The doctor says it's just a matter of days now. She keeps asking for you, wanting to see you one last time." My heart clenched. "All right, I'll go." After hanging up the phone, I changed into a simple outfit, didn't put on any makeup, and took a taxi to Henry's family's old house. The car stopped outside the familiar wrought iron gate, but I felt as if a lifetime had passed. The housekeeper's eyes reddened at the sight of me, and he sighed. "Madam, you're finally here. The old lady has refused to eat anything and has been waiting for you." He still called me madam. I nodded and followed him into the house where I had lived for 3 years. In the living room sat a strange woman. She was wearing a white dress with long hair cascading over her shoulders. Her demeanor was gentle, and there was indeed a 70% resemblance to me in her eyes and brows. She must be Sophie. When she saw me, she stood up, her face wearing just the right amount of apology and unease. "You must be Serena?" "Hello, I'm Sophie." Her voice was soft and delicate, like a fragile flower that couldn't withstand the wind. I nodded faintly, which counted as a greeting. Henry came downstairs and saw the two of us standing together. For a moment, his gaze seemed dazed. He walked over to Sophie and naturally wrapped his arm around her waist, the gesture both intimate and brimming with possessiveness. It was as if he was declaring sovereignty over her to me. I just found it amusing. He probably thought seeing this would break my heart or make me jealous. Unfortunately, I felt nothing inside, and was even tempted to yawn. "Grandma is waiting for you upstairs," he said to me, his tone stiff. Without looking at them again, I went straight upstairs. Grandma's room was filled with a faint medicinal smell. She lay on the bed, so thin she was practically skin and bones, but her spirit seemed quite good. When she saw me, her clouded eyes instantly brightened. "Sophie, you're here." She reached out her withered hand toward me. I hurried over and grasped it, feeling my eyes grow hot. "Grandma, I'm here." This form of address, I'd been using it for 3 years now. "Good child, you've lost weight." She stroked my face with concern. "That rascal Henry, has he been mistreating you? Tell Granny, and Granny will stand up for you." I shook my head and smiled, saying, "No, he treats me very well. It's just that I've been busy with work and haven't been taking good care of myself." "No matter how busy work gets, you must still take care of your health," Granny chattered on, her spirits noticeably better than before. I stayed with her for a long time, reading the newspaper to her and feeding her half a bowl of porridge. It wasn't until she had fallen into a deep sleep that I quietly tiptoed out of the room. When I went downstairs, only Henry was in the living room. Sophie was nowhere to be seen. He sat on the sofa, looking at me with a complicated gaze. "Thank you," he said, his voice slightly hoarse. "Don't thank me," I said calmly. "I came to see Grandma. It has nothing to do with you." With that, I was about to leave. "Wait a moment," he called out to me. I stopped in my tracks. "Is there something missing at home?" he asked, his tone carrying a hint of uncertainty. I paused for a second before realizing what he was referring to. After I left, I had taken away everything that belonged to me, all traces of my presence. The potted plants I had nurtured with my own hands were sent to the flower and bird market, the scented candles I had picked out were thrown into the trash, the throw pillows I always kept on the sofa were stored away in the closet. This home he had lived in for 3 years had been restored by me to its cold, sterile, showroom-like state, just for him alone. Nothing's missing, I said flatly. I just cleared away everything that didn't belong here. He fell silent. After a long while, he finally asked, was all that done by you? Otherwise? Did you really think flowers would magically bloom in this house by themselves, that your favorite pillows would just appear on the sofa, or that your stomach would automatically avoid foods you're allergic to? I couldn't keep a hint of sarcasm from coloring my tone. According to our contract, creating a warm family atmosphere was part of my job responsibilities. Now that I've resigned, these value-added services naturally come to an end. His expression darkened once again. After leaving Henry's old mansion, I went straight to the office. Yes, I have my own company, a small investment firm called Cresthaven Capital. I founded it with the earnings from my first successful investment, with Lydia as one of my partners. For the past 3 years, I played the role of Henry's meek and incompetent wife while ruthlessly conquering territory in the capital markets. Henry remained completely unaware. His arrogance blinded him, he never truly knew me. He only saw the face resembling Sophie's, but had no interest in the soul beneath that skin. Back at the office, Lydia was overwhelmed by an acquisition deal. Seeing me, she looked at me like a savior. Serena, thank goodness you're back. Starlight Tech won't budge on price, what should we do? I took off my coat, changed into professional attire, and instantly switched into work mode. What's their bottom line? Core technology patent. That X system is their moat for the next decade. The asking price is $3 billion, not a penny less. I walked to the huge floor-to-ceiling window, watching the endless stream of cars below, a playful smile curling at the corner of my mouth. The X system? What a coincidence. The patent holder of this technology is none other than me. It's an artificial intelligence algorithm I developed anonymously before marrying Henry. Back then, it was just a hobby, but later it caught the attention of the founder of Starlight Technology, and we partnered through a technology equity arrangement. All these years, I've existed as the mysterious behind-the-scenes shareholder, No need to negotiate with them. I turned to Lydia and said, I have a way to make them lower the price voluntarily. Lydia's eyes lit up, what's the plan? Trade secret. I winked at her. In the following days, I threw myself wholeheartedly into my work. Although Cresthaven Capital was relatively small in scale, it had a lean team and high-quality projects, already making a name for itself in the industry. I relish this feeling of strategizing and controlling everything. It's 10,000 times more exhilarating than being a carefree yet soulless rich housewife. During this time, Henry called me a few more times, using different unknown numbers. The content was nothing more than grandma missing me again, or something at home being misplaced. He seemed completely unaware that the home he referred to was no longer my home. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him and simply had my assistant set up a call firewall to block all unknown numbers. The world finally fell silent. A week later, I arranged to meet the CEO of Starlight Tech at an upscale restaurant. When I arrived, the other party was already there. Seeing me, Leonard, who had always looked down on everyone, showed clear surprise on his face. Serena? I smiled and sat down opposite him. Leonard, long time no see. Leonard was my senior in college and had once pursued me obsessively. After I married Henry, he had been depressed for a long time because of it. He probably never imagined that the mysterious owner of Cresthaven Capital, who had stirred up the business world, and the junior who had rejected him back then were the same person. What he never expected was that the true patent holder of the X system, which he regarded as the lifeblood of his company, was sitting right in front of him. Cresthaven Capital, you started it? His face was filled with utter disbelief. Just a stroke of luck, I said casually. He looked at me with a complex expression, shock, regret, and a hint of barely noticeable admiration. So, you asked to meet me today because of the X system? He quickly regained his composure and shifted into negotiation mode. No, I shook my head, picked up the teacup, and gently blew on it. I'm here today to discuss another deal with you. What deal? I want all the shares in your possession. I set down the teacup, looked at him, and said word by word, name your price. Leonard was stunned. He probably thought I was here to bargain down the price, never expecting I was here to pull the rug out from under him. Serena, are you joking? He forced a laugh. Do I look like I'm joking? I shot back. The atmosphere instantly froze. I knew that Starlight Tech had been having issues with their cash flow lately and desperately needed money to fill the gap. That was also why they were in such a hurry to sell the X system. But what I wanted now wasn't just partial technology, it was the entire company. Why should I sell it to you? He asked through gritted teeth. With the X system, it's mine. I casually dropped this bombshell, watching it explode in his mind like a nuclear detonation. Leonard was utterly stunned. He stared at me, lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. I watched him leisurely, in no hurry to press. I knew exactly how devastating this revelation was for him. The core competitive advantage he had always prided himself on, the company's most guarded secret, had never truly belonged to him from the very beginning. And that mysterious shareholder whose name he'd only heard in whispers, the person he'd never been able to identify, was none other than the junior schoolmate he'd once thought he could easily manipulate. This cognitive upheaval was enough to shatter a person's pride. After a long silence, he finally found his voice and spoke with difficulty. What proof do you have? I smiled. Leonard, do you really think I'd be sitting here talking to you without absolute certainty? I took out a document from my bag and pushed it toward him. It was the technical equity agreement we had signed back then, along with the registration certificate of the X system at the International Patent Office. The holder's column clearly stated, Serena. His face instantly turned deathly pale. Now, can we discuss the price? I asked. The negotiation that followed was unsurprising. Having lost X as his biggest bargaining chip, Leonard no longer had any leverage to haggle with me. In the end, I acquired Starlight Technology outright at a very reasonable, one might even say bargain, price. The moment the contract was signed, Leonard looked at me, his eyes filled with resentment and defeat. Serena, I never expected you'd hide your cards so well. It's not that I hid it well, I gathered my documents and stood up, it's that you never bothered to see me clearly. Neither Leonard nor Henry. In their eyes, women, especially beautiful ones, should be like hothouse flowers, mere appendages to men. They could never imagine that such a flower might actually be a man-eating plant. Leaving the restaurant, I was in high spirits. Securing Starlight Tech meant Cresthaven Capital's empire had expanded yet again. More importantly, the X system, this sharp blade, was now entirely in my hands. And this blade would soon be put to good use. Back at the office, Lydia excitedly gave me a bear hug. Serena, you're practically my goddess. You secured Starlight Tech without shedding a single drop of blood, how on earth did you manage that? I briefly explained the situation with the X system to her. After hearing it, her jaw dropped and stayed open for the longest time. OMG. So you're actually the legendary patent tycoon from the rumors? That idiot Henry. Does he even know his wife is a golden goose? He doesn't, I shrugged. All he knows is how much of his money I've spent. Serves him right. Let him regret it to death while clinging to his white moonlight. Lydia fumed indignantly. I smiled without responding. Regret? With Henry's arrogance, he'd probably never admit he was wrong. In his eyes, everything I did was just for money. As we were talking, my assistant knocked and entered. Boss, there's a gentleman claiming to be your ex-husband asking to see you. I frowned. Henry? How did he find his way here? I instructed my assistant to show him to the meeting room. Pushing open the door, I saw Henry sitting on the sofa in a well-tailored suit that accentuated his tall and handsome figure. Yet his tightly furrowed brows and impatient expression marred that handsomeness. When he saw me come in, he stood up and questioned me in a harsh tone, so this is your new company? Serena, just how many more things are you hiding from me? I walked over and sat down across from him, folding my hands on the table with a businesslike tone. Henry, we're already divorced. My affairs don't seem to require reporting to you anymore. He was taken aback by my remark, his expression growing even darker. I'm not here to argue with you. He took a deep breath, as if trying hard to suppress his temper. Sophie, she replaced all the decorations you arranged at home. I raised an eyebrow, urging him to continue. Last night, I went back home with a terrible headache and wanted to find that brand of painkillers you always kept. I searched everywhere but couldn't find them. I called you, but you didn't answer. There was even a hint of grievance in his tone. I almost laughed in disbelief. Did you misunderstand something? I'm your ex-wife, not your 24-hour personal caretaker. If you have a headache, you should go to your current wife or call your family doctor, not come to me. She doesn't know which brand I'm used to, he blurted out. Then you can tell her, I replied coldly. Or let her learn slowly. Just like I did back then. When I first married him, I didn't know any of his preferences either. It took me a full month to memorize all his habits, dietary restrictions, and allergens until they were ingrained in my mind. I got up in the middle of the night to make him hangover soup, tended to him tirelessly when he was sick, and studied various health recipes when he had stomachaches. No matter how well I performed, in his eyes, it was merely the duty of a stand-in. He never once thanked me or even gave me a kind look. And now, because of a small box of painkillers, he comes to my workplace to demand an explanation. How ridiculous. Serena, his voice lowered with a hint of warning, do you have to speak to me like this? Or what? Should I grovel and be grateful to you like I used to? I met his gaze fearlessly. Henry, cut out that domineering CEO act. This is my company, not your home. I'm not buying it. He probably had never been confronted so bluntly by me before and was momentarily stunned. He looked at me, his eyes filled with unfamiliarity and curiosity, as if he were getting to know a completely different person. You've changed. After a long while, he uttered 3 words. I haven't changed. I've always been this way. I stood up and issued a dismissal. If you have nothing else, I'm very busy with work, so I won't keep you company. With that, I turned to leave. Wait a moment, he called out to me again, next weekend, I have an important project bidding meeting, and I hope you can accompany me. I stopped in my tracks, turned to look at him, as if staring at a fool. What makes you think I would agree? You're still Grandma's nominal granddaughter-in-law. He played his only card. This bidding is very important to me, and Grandma cares deeply about it too. I don't want to disappoint her. Using Grandma to pressure me again. How despicable. I sneered inwardly but kept my expression neutral. Which project? The Smart City project in the Southern District. Our competitor is Cresthaven Capital, they've been making waves lately. As he said this, his eyes remained fixed on me, as if trying to catch some reaction. Yet I merely responded with a calm "Oh." I see, I said flatly. I'll be there when the time comes. He seemed somewhat surprised that I agreed so readily, pausing for a moment before saying, okay. After he left, Lydia rushed in, her face full of indignation. This Henry, is his face made of city walls? Asking his ex-wife to accompany him to a banquet, going to compete against her own company's bid? How could he even come up with that idea? I picked up my coffee, took a delicate sip, and curled my lips into a meaningful smile. It's not that he came up with the idea, he's just too confident. Confident about what? Confident that I still have lingering feelings for him, confident that I wouldn't dare confront him, confident that I'm still the Serena who can be manipulated at his will. I set down the coffee cup, a cold glint flashing in my eyes. Since he's offering his face so willingly, it'd be rude not to slap it. I'll attend the bidding meeting. But not as Mrs. Henry. I'll go as the founder of Cresthaven Capital to deliver him a special gift. In the days leading up to the bidding meeting, Henry was unusually quiet. No more harassing calls from him, and Sophie caused no trouble either. The calm before the storm always makes the anticipation particularly delicious. I poured all my energy at Cresthaven Capital into the Smart City project. With our core technology, the X system, as our trump card, combined with my 3 years of understanding Henry Corporation's internal operations, our bid proposal was flawless. Lydia's eyes sparkled with excitement as she looked at the final version of the plan. "Serena, we've got this in the bag." I can already picture Henry's constipated expression. I chuckled, "Don't celebrate too soon. Underestimating your enemy is a fatal mistake in warfare." I said it like that, but deep down, I was actually 90% sure. Although Henry Corporation is a giant with vast resources, artificial intelligence has always been their weak spot. And I, as it happened, had my finger right on their Achilles heel. On the day of the bidding conference, I chose a sharply tailored red suit dress that made my skin look fair and radiant, and my aura was fully unleashed. I strode confidently into the venue with my team, full of vigor and spirit. The moment I stepped through the door, I caught everyone's attention. Cresthaven Capital had recently made a big splash in the industry, but its founder, Serena, had always remained mysterious, never appearing in public before. Today was the first time I stood in the spotlight as the founder of Cresthaven Capital. Many people looked at me with expressions of surprise and admiration. Of course, the most astonished one was undoubtedly Henry. He was chatting and laughing with several business tycoons, Sophie clinging docilely to his side like a lovely golden canary. When he saw me leading my team through Cresthaven Capital's exclusive entrance, the smile on his face instantly froze. His pupils contracted sharply as he stared fixedly at the badge on my chest bearing Cresthaven Capital, Serena, his eyes brimming with earth-shattering shock and disbelief. At that moment, the entire venue seemed to have been muted. All eyes darted back and forth between Henry and me. Ex-wife turned rival? Now this plot was far more intriguing than any rich family drama. Sophie was clearly stunned too. She looked at me, then at Henry, her delicate face full of confusion and helplessness. Ignoring them, I walked straight to my seat, sat down, and began flipping through the documents in my hand, as if everything around me had nothing to do with me. My team members were all sharp cookies, each keeping their eyes down and maintaining perfect composure. On Henry's side, however, panic set in. His deputy managers huddled together, whispering with grim expressions. Henry forced himself to calm down. He gave me a deep look, a gaze as complex as a tangled web, filled with anger, betrayal, confusion, and a trace of something even he hadn't noticed, fear. He lowered his voice and said a few words to his assistant beside him, who immediately hurried away. I guessed he was sending someone to dig into Cresthaven Capital's background. A pity, it was too late. The bidding session officially began. After the host introduced the project background and bidding rules, the competing companies took turns presenting their proposals on stage. When it was Henry's group's turn, Henry personally stepped up. After all, he was the man at the helm of a vast business empire. He quickly adjusted his emotions and returned to his composed, confident demeanor. His speech was highly persuasive, and the presentation slides were flawlessly crafted. Henry's company's proposal emphasized their substantial capital, extensive project management experience, and strong government connections, truly competitive. A round of enthusiastic applause rose from the audience. Sophie sat in the front row, gazing at the man on stage with adoration, as if beholding an omnipotent deity. After Henry finished his speech, his gaze swept over me faintly, carrying a hint of provocation. It seemed to say, "See this? This is what real capability looks like. Your insignificant efforts are hardly worth mentioning." I responded with a polite smile. Then, it was Cresthaven Capital's turn. I stepped onto the stage with composure. The moment I stood at the podium, I could feel Henry's eyes locking onto me like a spotlight. Without glancing his way, I surveyed the room and began speaking in a clear, resonant voice. "Good afternoon, esteemed judges and distinguished guests. I am Serena, founder of Cresthaven Capital. Today, the proposal we bring has only one core advantage, and that is technology. We possess the most fundamental underlying architecture technology for the Smart City project, the X Artificial Intelligence Management System. When I mentioned the X system, Henry's expression instantly changed. The technical director beside him even abruptly stood up from his seat, looking utterly shocked. Ignoring their reactions, I continued my presentation. I elaborated in detail on the advanced nature, stability, and security of the X system, as well as how it would empower the Smart City project. My speech was devoid of flowery language, consisting entirely of substance and data. Yet every word struck like a sledgehammer, landing squarely on the Achilles heel of the Henry group. When my speech ended, the room was first deathly silent, then erupted into even more thunderous applause than before. Everyone had understood. Technology was the key to this project. And Cresthaven Capital possessed the absolutely core technology. The outcome of this bidding war was already decided. I walked off the stage and returned to my seat. Lydia excitedly grabbed my hand and whispered, "Serena, you were absolutely brilliant just now." I smiled at her and turned my gaze toward the judges' panel. Sure enough, the judges were all whispering among themselves, their eyes filled with approval when they looked at me. Meanwhile, on the other side, Henry's face had darkened to the point where it seemed water could drip from it. He probably never dreamed in his wildest nightmares that his proud business empire would be checkmated by his ex-wife, whom he'd always looked down upon, using the very technology he most despised. During the intermission, people in the venue came over to exchange business cards and cozy up to me. I handled it all with effortless ease and perfect composure. Just then, a shrill female voice shattered the harmonious atmosphere. "Serena, you thief! Have you no conscience at all?" I turned around to see Sophie pointing at me with red-rimmed eyes, putting on the pitiful act of someone who'd been wronged. Her outburst successfully drew everyone's attention. "The show begins." I leisurely observed her and calmly asked, "Sophie, you can eat recklessly, but you shouldn't speak carelessly. What exactly did I steal from you?" "You stole Henry's company's core trade secrets," she declared with righteous indignation. "That so-called X system, you must have stolen it from Henry's computer while you were at his place. You corporate spy, you ungrateful wretch." She'd cast herself in the role of a naive, innocent lover standing up for her man. This was a routine she'd perfected. The whispers started around us, and the looks directed my way grew increasingly suspicious. After all, a plot like ex-wife stealing trade secrets from her former husband's company fits perfectly with the melodramatic logic of wealthy family feuds. Henry also walked over. He didn't stop Sophie, just looked at me with an extremely complicated gaze, as if waiting for an explanation. Perhaps he'd rather believe I'm a thief than admit I'm far more capable than he imagined. Acknowledging that would shatter his fragile male ego beyond repair. Watching their coordinated performance, I could only find it laughable. Before I could speak, Lydia had already lost her patience. "Sophie, you need to present evidence when making accusations. You claim our Serena stole confidential information from Henry's company, where's your proof?" "Proof?" Sophie sneered. "She's a woman Henry supported for 3 years, yet immediately after the divorce she starts a company and produces such groundbreaking technology. Isn't that obvious enough? If she didn't steal it, did she develop it herself?" Her words echoed the thoughts of many present. They refused to believe that a seemingly fragile woman could possess such formidable capabilities. They preferred to believe there must be some shady dealings behind it all. I smiled. A light, carefree smile. "Sophie, there's something you probably don't know." I faced everyone's gaze and said clearly, word by word, the X system was indeed developed by me. Its patent was registered 4 years ago. I married Henry 3 years ago. Moreover, before we got married, I signed a detailed prenuptial agreement with Mr. Henry, which explicitly states in black and white that this patent belongs to my personal premarital property. I paused, turned my gaze to Henry, whose face had turned pale, and delivered the final blow. "You personally signed this agreement back then, Henry. You haven't forgotten, have you?" My words exploded like a depth charge among the crowd. Everyone was stunned. Premarital property? Personally signed? This meant that Henry had known about this technology from the very beginning and acknowledged that it belonged to me personally. Then Sophie's so-called theft became a complete joke. All eyes turned to Henry in unison. His face turned pale, then green, then purple, as colorful as a painter's palette. Of course he remembered that agreement. Back then, in his haste to marry me to appease his grandmother, he had signed the thick contract Lydia brought without even reading it. In his eyes, I was just a woman who would sell everything for money, and that agreement was merely my bargaining chip to demand more alimony. He never dreamed that buried within it was a landmine capable of toppling his entire business empire. Sophie was dumbfounded too. She stared at Henry in disbelief. "Henry, is what she said true? You knew?" Henry's lips trembled, but not a single word came out. Admit it? Admit that he had made such a foolish mistake 3 years ago? Admit he had been played like a puppet by a woman? His pride wouldn't allow it. Yet if he didn't admit it, the black and white evidence in my hands would be the loudest slap across his face. Watching his flustered state, I felt no satisfaction, only the calm of a settled matter. I turned to Sophie with a faint smile. "Sophie, do you still think I'm the thief now?" Sophie's face flushed crimson. She looked to Henry pleadingly, hoping he would speak up for her. Yet Henry merely stared at me, his gaze turbulent with unreadable emotions, too preoccupied to spare her a glance. "No, impossible," Sophie murmured, seemingly unable to accept the fact. How could you possibly develop something so remarkable? You're clearly just a what?" I kindly reminded her, "A vase who only knows how to wash clothes, cook, and live off a man." The smile on my face gradually turned cold. "Sophie, put away your outdated gender biases. Women are capable of far more than you imagine. In this day and age, relying on brains is much more reliable than relying on men." After saying that, I ignored her and turned to Lydia, saying, "Let's go, we'll wait for the results in the VIP room." We walked past the stunned Henry and Sophie, leaving them with a carefree silhouette behind us. From behind came waves of murmuring and the frantic clicking of camera shutters. I knew that tomorrow's headlines in a city would have their story. The bidding results were unsurprising. Cresthaven Capital secured the Smart City project with an absolute advantage. As the news spread, Henry Group's stock price plummeted, evaporating billions within an hour. The entire business world of the city was in an uproar. No one had expected that this seemingly one-sided showdown would end in such a dramatic fashion. The once arrogant business emperor Henry was ruthlessly trampled underfoot by the ex-wife he had always looked down upon. And Serena, this name spread throughout a city overnight. The phone lines at Cresthaven Capital were nearly overwhelmed. Countless partnership offers and investment interests came pouring in like snowflakes. My team and I were so busy we barely had time to catch our breath. But I was enjoying every moment of this hectic pace. This was the empire I'd built with my own capabilities, and every step forward felt steady and resolute. In the evening, the company held a small celebration party. Everyone was excited, raising their glasses to toast this hard-won victory. Lydia had a bit too much to drink and hugged me emotionally. "Serena, I'm so happy for you. You finally don't have to put up with that scumbag's attitude anymore." I smiled. I never cared about his attitude. What I cared about was the contract. Lydia froze for a moment, then burst into laughter. "Yes. The contract. A toast to our glorious contractual spirit." We dissolved into laughter together. After the victory celebration, I returned to my apartment. The moment I opened the door, I was hit by a strong smell of alcohol. On the living room sofa sat a disheveled figure. It was Henry. I had no idea how he'd gotten in. Maybe he used the spare key left from before, or perhaps he called a locksmith. But none of that mattered now. I turned on the light, flooding the living room with sudden brightness. He seemed unused to this abrupt illumination, instinctively raising a hand to shield his eyes. He looked utterly wretched, his expensive suit crumpled, his tie hanging loosely around his neck, his hair slightly disheveled. Several empty liquor bottles were scattered on the floor. This disheveled appearance was a far cry from the always composed and meticulous CEO Gu. He lowered his hand and looked at me with bloodshot, reddened eyes. You planned this all along, didn't you? His voice was hoarse and strained. Starting 3 years ago, no, 4 years ago, you set up this elaborate scheme just for today? I walked to the bar counter, poured myself a glass of water, and didn't answer his question. What did you take me for? A fool? A stepping stone? He stood up and advanced toward me step by step, his emotions spiraling out of control. You used me, you used my company to help you complete your initial capital accumulation, and then at my most critical moment, you delivered the fatal blow. Serena, what is your heart made of? Stone? I took a sip of water to moisten my throat before looking at him calmly. Henry, have you forgotten that it was you who approached me first? It was you who needed a stand-in to comfort your grandmother and to silence the gossip outside. It was you who measured our relationship with money, turning our marriage into a transaction with a clear price tag. From the very beginning, it was just a partnership. I provided emotional value for you, and you offered financial support for me. We each got what we needed, and neither of us owes the other anything. I used you? Didn't you also take advantage of my face, which resembles Sophie's? Each of my words was like a knife, stabbing straight into his heart. He was left speechless by my questions, his face turning deathly pale. Yes, it had been a transaction from the very start. He had never treated me as his wife, and I had never regarded him as my husband. It was just that he was used to being in control and couldn't accept the fact that he had become the one who was being played. What about those 3 years? He grasped at the last straw, his voice trembling as he asked, were the 3 years we spent together all a lie? Did you really have no feelings for me at all? When he asked this, there was actually a hint of hope in his eyes. I looked at him and suddenly felt a pang of pity. He still didn't understand where the problem lay. Feelings? I laughed, though the smile didn't reach my eyes. Do you think a woman who was reminded every day by her husband that she was just a substitute, a woman who had to tread carefully at home, afraid of upsetting you, a woman who stayed by your side for 3 days and nights when you were sick, only to be told upon waking, everything you did, Sophie could have done too, do you think such a woman could have feelings for you? My voice was soft, yet every word pierced like a knife. Henry staggered as if all his strength had been drained from him, stumbling back 2 steps before collapsing onto the sofa. All those details he had overlooked for 3 years, all those efforts he had taken for granted, now played back in his mind frame by frame like a movie. Every morning at 6, I would get up to prepare breakfast for him at just the right temperature. I knew he disliked scallions, ginger, and garlic, so I meticulously picked them out of every dish by hand. I knew he suffered from migraines, so the house was always stocked with his preferred painkillers and massagers. I knew he was a light sleeper, so his bedroom was perpetually kept in absolute silence and darkness. I took care of everything for him, ensuring he could charge ahead in the business world without a single worry. And what did I get in return? The icy expression he gave me the morning after his all-night phone calls with Sophie. It was him, openly mocking me in front of friends, saying, "She's good for nothing but that pretty face." It was him, drunkenly holding me while whispering another woman's name, Sophie. Time and again. I'm not heartless, but my heart had long been ground into an unbreakable stone by 3 years of indifference and disdain. Everything I did was merely fulfilling my contractual obligations, I stated calmly in my final declaration. Now that the contract has ended, it's time for me to clock out. Henry, what we had was always just a transaction, never love. Not in the past, not now, and never will be in the future. My words, like a final verdict, completely shattered him. He buried his head in his knees, shoulders trembling slightly, his hands clutching his head. It was the first time I'd seen him so vulnerable and helpless. But in my heart, there wasn't a trace of pity. If he had known this day would come, why did he act that way in the first place? Leave the keys and get out of my home, I said coldly before turning to walk into the bedroom and shutting the door behind me. I didn't bother looking back at him. There was nothing left to say between us. The next morning, when I woke up, Henry was already gone. A single key sat on the coffee table. The apartment no longer carried even a whisper of his presence. My life, at last, was finally and utterly peaceful. In the days that followed, I was spinning like a top. The Smart City project officially launched, and with endless details needing my approval, I practically lived at the office, meetings, paperwork, client meetings. It never stopped. Although tired, it was fulfilling. I no longer had to guess another person's thoughts, nor live in someone else's shadow. I am who I am, Serena. During this time, something unexpected happened. Henry's grandmother passed away. The elderly lady left peacefully in her sleep. When Henry's butler called me, I was away on a business trip. I immediately booked the earliest flight back. At the funeral, I saw Henry. He had lost a lot of weight and looked very haggard, shrouded in gloom. When he saw me, he just forced a faint, bitter smile, one that looked even more painful than crying. We didn't exchange a word the entire time. As his granddaughter-in-law, I sent the old lady off on her final journey. It was what I had promised her. After the funeral, Henry's grandmother's lawyer approached me and said the old lady had left a will that included a portion for me. I was somewhat surprised. In the lawyer's office, I saw the will. Grandma had left me 10% of the group's shares under her name. At the current stock price, it was an astronomical amount. At the end of the will was a handwritten note from Grandma. My dear child, Grandma knows you're not Sophie. Though my eyesight has faded, my heart is not blind. These 3 years have been hard on you. That scoundrel Henry, spoiled by me, doesn't know how to cherish what he has. Grandma can't give you anything else, so I hope this small token can compensate you a little. I hope you can live for yourself from now on, live happily and freely. Looking at that familiar handwriting, my tears finally fell uncontrollably. So, she had known everything all along. She knew I wasn't Sophie, yet she still gave me the most sincere affection and protection. She was the only one in this cold family who had ever shown me warmth. Henry also saw that note. He stood behind me, his body stiff, silent. I didn't know what he was thinking at that moment. Perhaps shock, perhaps shame, or perhaps regret. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. I wiped away my tears and said to the lawyer, I waive my right to inherit this estate. Both the lawyer and Henry were stunned. Serena, are you sure? This is 10% of the group's shares. The lawyer could hardly believe his ears. I'm certain. I nodded. I'll always remember Grandma's kindness. But this, it's too valuable. I can't accept it. After signing the inheritance waiver, I turned and left the law firm without looking back at Henry's expression. I just wanted to escape that suffocating place as quickly as possible. The news that I had given up my inheritance of Henry's corporate shares quickly spread through social circles. Everyone thought I'd gone mad. Turning down such astronomical wealth, what kind of saintly behavior was this? Lydia also called to ask me, Serena, are you out of your mind? Why would you refuse money handed to you on a silver platter? You were entitled to it. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows in the office, gazing at the dazzling nightscape outside, I calmly replied, Lydia, some things are more important than money. Like what? For example, being at ease with oneself. I didn't want to have any further involvement with Henry. Those 10% of shares weren't wealth to me, but shackles. I had finally broken free and had no intention of being bound again. Moreover, the current me no longer needed to rely on others' charity to prove my worth. I had my own career, my own future. I could rely on my own 2 hands to create wealth that wouldn't lose to anyone else's. After hanging up the phone, I rubbed my throbbing temples. I had been way too exhausted lately. The project had entered a critical phase, leaving me almost no time to rest. My assistant brought in a cup of coffee and said with concern, Boss, you don't look too well. Should we go to the hospital for a checkup? I waved my hand dismissively, it's nothing, just an old problem. I'll be fine after some rest. My stomach has never been quite right ever since those days when I neglected regular meals while taking care of Henry. Who would have thought that after the divorce, this would be the only souvenir that remained? How ironic. Just as I was lost in thought, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I wasn't going to answer, but as if possessed, I pressed the call button anyway. On the other end came a soft yet slightly triumphant female voice. It was Sophie. Serena, long time no see. Something up? My tone was indifferent. Nothing major, just wanted to let you know that Henry and I are getting engaged. Her voice was dripping with smugness. On the 8th of next month, at the Hilton. I'll send you an invitation, and you absolutely must come. She probably wanted to see me react with pain and jealousy. Too bad for her, she'll be disappointed. I just found it irritating. Congratulations, I said flatly. No need to send the invitation, I'm busy. Also, don't call me anymore. I don't want to hear anything about the two of you. With that, I was about to hang up. Wait a minute. She hastily called out to me, Serena, don't get too full of yourself. Do you think you've won? Do you really think you can outplay me? The one Henry has always loved is me, and only me. You're nothing but a substitute while I was away. Now that I'm back, you should get the hell out of here. You think securing the Smart City project makes you so great? Let me tell you, with just one word from me, Henry can make sure your company doesn't last a day in City A. Listening to her threats, I couldn't help but laugh. Oh really? I chuckled lightly, well then, I'll wait and see. But Sophie, there's something I should remind you. A woman who needs to threaten her ex to secure her position, how much weight do you think you truly hold in the heart of the man you love? Is what you call love real, or just a figment of your own delusion? Have you even thought about it yourself? I didn't wait for her to reply, directly hung up the phone, and then blocked her. The best way to deal with such a clown is to ignore them. Because you never know where their bottom line is. I thought Sophie was just making empty threats. I didn't expect her to actually follow through. Within a few days, Cresthaven Capital ran into trouble. First, several long-term suppliers suddenly terminated their contracts unilaterally, even willing to pay high penalties. Then, the bank tightened our credit line citing risk assessment as the reason. The most fatal blow was the Smart City project being suspended by relevant authorities due to potential technical security risks. For a time, the company was filled with tension and suspicion. Everyone knew Henry was behind it. In City A, Henry is like the heavens. Offending Henry is equivalent to courting death. Several executives in the company were deeply worried, and some even considered resigning. Lydia was so furious that she cursed in the office, Henry, that scumbag. Such a sore loser. When he lost the bid, he resorted to such despicable tactics. And that Sophie, she's nothing but bad luck. I gazed out the window with a calm expression. No need to rush. The real show has just begun. I had already anticipated Henry's retaliation. Given his personality, he would never let things go without a fight. He was trying to force me to bow my head, to plead for mercy. Unfortunately, he miscalculated. In Serena's dictionary, there are no words like surrender. I called an emergency meeting to steady the team's morale. Then, I began to tackle them one by one. For the supplier issue, I leveraged the connections I'd built over the years and quickly found new alternatives at even better prices. As for the bank, I directly covered the shortfall using the company's own funds and reached out to several overseas venture capital firms. They were very optimistic about Cresthaven Capital's prospects and were willing to provide additional financial support. The hardest to resolve was the government side. I knew Henry must have mobilized his network behind this. Going head-to-head, I was no match for him. So, I needed a different approach. I arranged a dinner with a friend who worked as an editor at a financial media outlet. During the meal, I casually dropped some inside information about the suspension of the Smart City project. For example, when a certain large enterprise failed in a bidding process, it maliciously suppressed the private enterprise that won the bid, using improper means to interfere with market competition. For instance, the core technology X system of this project has already obtained patent protection in multiple overseas countries and passed the most stringent safety certifications. The so-called technological security risks are completely baseless. My friend is quite sharp and immediately understood my implication. The next day, an in-depth report titled "Business Giants Suppressing Innovative Enterprises, Who is Strangling Our Future?" appeared as headlines on major news websites. Although the article did not name names explicitly, all the details pointed directly to Henry's conglomerate. A single spark can start a prairie fire. Public opinion erupted instantly. Netizens began digging deep into the truth behind the incident. Soon, a series of melodramatic events, Henry's failed corporate bid, his ex-wife's comeback, and the return of his white moonlight, were all exposed to the public. Henry's company's PR team was overwhelmed. The stock price plummeted once again. Meanwhile, Cresthaven Capital, portraying itself as a victim suppressed by a giant yet resiliently fighting back, garnered widespread sympathy and support. Under mounting public pressure, the relevant authorities also reopened the security review of the X system. The verdict? Naturally, perfectly qualified. The Smart City project was reinstated. This brilliant counterattack in the court of public opinion caught Henry completely off guard. As for me? I watched the tigers fight from the mountain, emerging unscathed. Henry must have been driven to desperation by me. That evening, he simply ambushed me at the entrance of my office building. He looked even more haggard than the last time we met, with red veins spidering across his eyes and a stubble shadowing his jaw. He gripped my arm with such force it felt like he might crush my bones. "Serena, what exactly do you want?" he asked through clenched teeth, his voice thick with frustration and exhaustion. "Do you really have to destroy me, destroy the company, before you're satisfied?" I forcefully shook off his hand and glared at him coldly. "Henry, have you got it wrong? From the very beginning, it's never been about what I want, but what you want. It was you, unable to accept losing the bid, resorting to underhanded tactics behind the scenes. It was you who allowed your fiancé to slander and attack me without cause. It was you who wanted to destroy me and ruin my company. Everything I did was just self-defense. How did it become me trying to destroy you in your words? Does only Henry get to suppress others while no one is allowed to fight back?" My words were like sharp knives, cutting him to pieces. He opened his mouth but found himself powerless to refute. Indeed, he had struck first. He thought he could manipulate me at will, never expecting that the soft persimmon he took me for was actually a hard nut that would crack his teeth. I didn't mean to destroy you," he murmured, his voice carrying a hint of panic he himself hadn't noticed. I just wanted you to come back." I burst into laughter as if hearing the most ridiculous joke. "Come back? Back where? To that frigid villa, to keep playing your stand-in housekeeper? Henry, have you lost your mind? What makes you think that after I've already got the whole forest, I'd still turn back for your crooked little tree? You." He was so infuriated by me that his face turned pale, and his hand trembled as he pointed at me. "And one more thing," I said, staring at him word by word, "put away that pitiful, self-righteous affection of yours. You don't love me, you love nothing but the illusion of someone who obeys your every whim and satisfies all your controlling desires. You can't let go of me not because you love me, but because you can't accept the fact that I'm no longer under your control. What you miss is not me as a person, but that past when you could trample on my dignity at will and I never fought back. You're just unwilling to accept it." After saying that, I stopped looking at him and turned to leave. He didn't chase after me. From the rearview mirror, I saw him standing alone under the streetlight, his figure stretched long and lonely, filled with desolation and solitude. At that moment, I finally felt a hint of satisfaction. Not from the pleasure of revenge, but because I had finally torn off his self-deceptive facade with my own hands, forcing him to see his own true and ugly heart. "Henry, your greatest sorrow is not losing me. It's that you never truly knew what you really wanted." The crisis at Henry Group did not end with the project's lift of restrictions. The ongoing media frenzy, coupled with the plummeting stock prices, led many shareholders to question Henry's management abilities. Several of the company's senior executives began to unite, preparing to impeach him at the board meeting. Amid internal and external troubles, Henry was overwhelmed. And Sophie, whom he thought was his confidant, not only failed to help in any way but kept making things worse. Either she was arguing with netizens on social media one day, or she was tearfully questioning Henry the next day about why he didn't stand up for her. It's said that they had many arguments over this. Their originally planned engagement banquet was also postponed indefinitely. All of this was told to me by Lydia. Like a war correspondent, she gave me real-time updates on the latest developments from the enemy camp every day. I listened, feeling completely unperturbed. None of this had anything to do with me anymore. My smart city project was progressing very smoothly. Cresthaven Capital's reputation was also growing louder. I began to appear frequently at various financial summits and forums, sharing my experiences as a representative of the new generation of successful female entrepreneurs. I stood under the spotlight, confident, composed, and radiant. I was no longer the Serena who needed to hide behind others. One day, as I was about to leave after attending a forum, someone called out to me. It was Quentin, Henry's friend and also Sophie's #1 supporter. He looked somewhat haggard, and the way he looked at me was complicated. "Serena, can I talk to you?" he asked, his tone surprisingly polite. I raised an eyebrow and nodded. We found a cafe and sat down. "I want to apologize on Sophie's behalf," he began, catching me off guard. At the bidding meeting, she acted impulsively and said things she shouldn't have. "I hope you won't hold it against her." I stared at him without responding. "And Henry," he paused before continuing, "he's been under a lot of pressure lately. Between company matters and the situation between you and Sophie, it's pushing him to the brink. He's really not a bad person. He just cares about Sophie too much." Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. "Quentin, did you really ask me here just to say these things? Do you honestly think, after everything I've been through, I'd believe such feeble explanations? Is he not a bad man? A man who tramples on the dignity of a stand-in for the sake of his white moonlight, is he not a bad man? A man who resorts to unfair competition to suppress his rivals, is he not a bad man? Quentin, are you telling me a joke?" My retort left him speechless. He opened his mouth as if to defend himself, but in the end, it turned into a sigh. "Serena, I know we've wronged you." He looked at me, a hint of pleading in his eyes. "But Henry's corporation is his grandfather's lifelong work. It can't be destroyed just like that. I beg you, show mercy and let Henry go. As long as you're willing to back down, we can discuss any terms." I looked at him and suddenly found it somewhat amusing. Let him go? When he was suppressing me back then, why didn't he think about letting me go? Now that he can't win, he comes begging me for mercy? Since when is life so easy? "Quentin, go back and tell Henry." I stood up, looking down at him, and said word by word, "The business world is like a battlefield, the victor becomes king, the loser a bandit. Since he dared to start this war, he should be prepared to bear the consequences. Want me to stop? Fine. Let him come and beg me himself." Henry eventually came. The day after he was officially removed as CEO by the board. He walked into my office. No appointment, just barged in. He looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. His hair was streaked with gray, his eyes sunken, and the once expensive suit hung loosely on his frame. He was no longer the confident and ambitious business tycoon. Just a dethroned, fallen king. He stood before my desk, silently staring at me. After a long pause, he finally spoke hoarsely, "I lost." I raised my head and looked at him calmly. "Yes. You've won," he added. "Yes," I replied, still composed. He suddenly laughed, a laugh uglier than tears. "Serena, you really are quite the schemer. You flatter me." He pulled out the chair and sat down across from me as if it took all his strength. Name your terms. He said, as long as it's within my power, as long as you'll spare my company. I looked at him and suddenly felt an inexplicable emptiness. I used to imagine that trampling him underfoot and watching him grovel before me would bring me boundless satisfaction. But when the moment truly arrived, my heart was left with nothing but emptiness. The end of revenge turned out to be void. I have no conditions, I said flatly. He froze. What do you mean? What I mean is, I have no interest in your conglomerate. From the very beginning, my goal was never to crush you or to take over your company. I just want to reclaim what belongs to me and protect my own career. It's you who kept provoking me, pushing us to this point today. He looked at me in disbelief. You went through all this trouble, not to get back at me? Get back at you? I laughed. Henry, you overestimate yourself. To me, you're just an unpleasant chapter of the past. I've long moved on. It's you who's been stuck in the past, refusing to let go. My words hit him like a heavyweight punch. He stared at me blankly, his eyes filled with confusion and pain. All along, he'd assumed everything I did was out of hatred for him. He even, to some extent, enjoyed this being hated. Because hatred also represents caring. But now, I told him I didn't care about him at all. This was harder for him to accept than any revenge. Then why? He struggled to speak, as if wanting to ask why I wouldn't accept his peace offering. I didn't wait for him to finish before cutting him off. The reason I refuse to let this go isn't because I hate you. It's because I want everyone to see. To see that capital can't act with impunity. To see that rules must be respected. To see that women shouldn't be objectified or belittled. I'm not trying to defeat just you, Henry. I'm trying to defeat the outdated, arrogant, self-righteous values you represent. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing at the city I had fought so hard for. Henry, your era is over. Henry left. When he departed, he said nothing, only his retreating figure appeared incomparably desolate and aged. Shortly after he was gone, I ceased the media attacks on his conglomerate. As I had said, my goal was already achieved. As for Henry's future, that was his own affair, none of my concern. Some time later, I heard that Sophie and Henry had called off their engagement. After Henry lost everything, this so-called white moonlight of his didn't hesitate to leave, already searching for her next target. This outcome didn't surprise me in the slightest. A woman who could only share prosperity but not adversity, such so-called love was inherently fragile and easily shattered. As for me, I welcomed a new chapter in my life. Cresthaven Capital achieved tremendous success with the Smart City project, propelling it to become one of China's top tech investment firms. As the founder, my net worth multiplied, elevating me to a figure many looked up to. Honors and accolades came one after another. But I knew this was just the beginning. My journey was destined for the stars and beyond. One day, as I was leaving after attending a forum, someone stopped me. Henry was pronounced dead in the early hours of this morning at his private villa due to gas poisoning. The police initially suspect suicide. I stared at those words, frozen. Henry, dead? My heart felt as if something had violently twisted it, sending a faint sting of pain. I thought my heart had long become still as still water. Yet I never expected that upon hearing news of his death, I'd still feel moved. Not love, nor hatred. But a kind of, complex, indescribable emotion. Like a nightmare that had haunted you for ages suddenly coming to an end in such a brutal manner. It makes one sigh, leaves one desolate. I didn't attend Henry's funeral. Between us, all accounts had long been settled. That he chose to end his life this way was his own decision. I've no right to comment, nor any desire to judge. Only occasionally, in the dead of night when all is quiet, I still think of him. I recall the amazed yet restrained look in his eyes when he first saw me. I remember the rare warmth he showed in front of his grandmother. I think of how he lost control time and again in front of me, how he crumbled each time. He was a scoundrel, but also a pitiful soul. Trapped by his own pride and arrogance his whole life, he was ultimately destroyed by it. If back then, he could have let go of that ridiculous obsession and taken a look at the person beside him. If back then, I could have been a little braver and told him I was no one's substitute. Would our ending have been different? But life offers no what-ifs. What's done is done, let it drift away with the wind. What I must do is live in the present and look toward the future. The first phase of the Smart City project has been successfully completed. At the celebration banquet, the young members of the project team surrounded me, laughing and cheering. They said I was their idol. I look at their youthful, vibrant faces, as if seeing myself from many years ago. Back then, I too was full of fantasies about the future and expectations for love. Later, I was battered and bruised by reality. But I didn't fall. I turned those wounds into my armor. Alone, I hacked through thorns and brambles, carving out my own path. Now, I stand atop the mountain, gazing down at the empire I built. At last, I can live for myself. 1 year later. Cresthaven Capital had become a leading enterprise in the industry, with operations spanning the globe. That day, I was attending an international AI summit abroad. During a break in the conference, I took a solitary stroll by the riverside. The golden glow of the setting sun danced on the water's surface, creating a dazzling, breathtaking view. A street artist called out to me, offering to paint my portrait. I gladly agreed. I sat on a bench, gazing at the distant scenery, my expression serene and peaceful. The artist finished quickly and handed me the painting. In the portrait, I wore a crisp white suit, with a faint smile playing at the corners of my lips. My eyes held the vastness of stars and oceans, revealing the clarity and tranquility that comes from having weathered countless storms. "Madam, you are the most intriguing woman I've ever met," the painter said with a smile. I smiled. Yes, intriguing. But those stories are all in the past now. I paid, took the painting, and continued walking forward. A man approached from the opposite direction. Dressed in casual attire, tall and handsome, he looked like an elegant gentleman. When he saw me, he paused briefly before offering a friendly smile. "Excuse me, are you Miss Serena, the founder of X?" I was slightly surprised. "That's me." "And you are?" "Hello, my name is Eric, the chief architect at AG." He extended his hand to me. "I've been following your work for a long time. Your X system is truly remarkable." AG? That's a Hall of Fame presence in the field of artificial intelligence. I never expected to meet their chief architect here, in such a way. I reached out and shook his hand. "Hello, Mr. Eric. I've long heard of your reputation." We exchanged a smile. The breeze by the riverside gently brushed past. I knew a new story was about to begin. And this time, the protagonist of the story would be me, Serena, alone. I really hit it off with Eric. We talked about everything from the future of artificial intelligence to the origins of the universe, from the latest technological breakthroughs to our favorite sci-fi movies. He was knowledgeable, witty, and very respectful toward women. Chatting with him was a true pleasure. We exchanged contact information and agreed to have more in-depth technical discussions after returning to our home country. As we parted, he looked at me, his blue eyes filled with admiration and sincerity. "Serena, I hope we'll have more opportunities to collaborate in the future." "I hope so too," I replied with a smile. Watching him walk away, I suddenly felt that life might not be so dull after all. Perhaps I could try opening myself up to a new relationship. A relationship built on equality, respect, and mutual admiration. Not as anyone's substitute, nor as someone's appendage. Just two interesting souls, drawn to each other, elevating one another. After returning to China, Eric and I maintained close contact. We often dined together, visited exhibitions together, and discussed technical challenges together. He was like a treasure trove, always bringing me new surprises. Our colleagues at the company noticed something was afoot and teased me, saying the iron tree has blossomed. Lydia was especially excited, constantly whispering in my ear, urging me to grab hold of this perfect man without delay. While I played it off with "let nature take its course," in my heart, ripples had begun to stir. Then came my birthday. I didn't make a big fuss, just a simple meal at my apartment with Lydia and a few core executives from the company. After dinner, everyone encouraged me to make a wish. I closed my eyes and clasped my hands together. I wished for the health and happiness of those I love and those who love me. I wished for my career to reach new heights. I wished for the courage to be loved. Just as I finished my wish, the doorbell rang. Lydia went to answer it. Standing at the door was Eric, holding a large bouquet of blue roses. Dressed in a white suit, he looked like a prince straight out of a fairy tale. He walked up to me, knelt on one knee, and opened a velvet box. Inside was a dazzling diamond ring. "Serena," he gazed at me with deep affection, his blue eyes shimmering like a galaxy of stars. "I'm not one for sweet talk. I only know that from the very first moment I saw you, I was drawn to you. Your intelligence, your resilience, your kindness, everything about you fascinates me. I don't want to be your past, nor do I just want to be part of your present. I want to be your future. Serena, will you give me this chance?" Tears welled up in my eyes instantly. This time, it wasn't because of grievance or pain. It was because of happiness. I looked at him and nodded firmly. "I do." I thought the story would end here, with the prince and princess living happily ever after. But life is always a little more complicated than fairy tales. Not long after Eric and I got engaged, Cresthaven Capital was preparing to go public. This was a crucial step for the company's development and another peak in my career. The IPO roadshow went exceptionally smoothly, with investors highly optimistic about Cresthaven Capital's future prospects. But just at this critical moment, an unexpected crisis struck. A little-known small company suddenly filed a patent lawsuit against us, accusing our X system of infringing on their core patent. Moreover, they demanded the court immediately halt Cresthaven Capital's IPO process. This abrupt accusation caught us completely off guard. If not properly resolved, our listing plans would be completely derailed, and the company's stock price would inevitably suffer a heavy blow. I immediately organized our legal and technical teams to investigate. The results left us utterly shocked. The patent presented by the other party bore striking similarities to our X system, both in technical architecture and core algorithms. What's more, their patent application date was actually 3 months earlier than mine. How could that be? I had developed the X system entirely on my own. With my own sweat and blood, there was absolutely no possibility of plagiarism. The only explanation was that my core code had been leaked during development. But the number of people who could access my core code could be counted on one hand. Who could it possibly be? I locked myself in my office for an entire day. I pulled up all email correspondence, server logs, and code submission records from 4 years ago when I was developing the X system. I went through everything meticulously, leaving no suspicious detail unchecked. Finally, in an encrypted email attachment, I discovered a faint clue. It was an email I had sent to Henry. Back then, we had just gotten married. He treated me with relative courtesy and occasionally showed some interest in my hobbies. Once, he asked me what I was researching. I still held on to a shred of fantasy about him back then, hoping he would see my value beyond that face. So, I sent him the prototype model of the X system, wanting to hear his opinion. In the email, I elaborated in detail on my design concepts and technical architecture. Looking back now, it's laughable. What kind of opinion could he, a complete layman, have given me? He casually replied with just a "not bad at the time," and then there was no further response. I thought the matter was over just like that. Never did I expect the problem would lie right there. I immediately instructed the technical team to track the flow of that email. The investigation revealed that this email had stayed in Henry's inbox for less than 10 minutes before being forwarded to an unfamiliar email address. And the registration location of that email account? The very small business that sued me. All clues pointed to one person. Henry. My heart sank to the bottom. I thought he was already dead, and that the grudges between us should have been settled once and for all. Yet I never imagined he had planted such a huge time bomb for me 4 years ago. What on earth does he want? To uncover the truth, I flew abroad. I found the company that had sued us. It was a shell company registered in a remote town, with no actual business operations whatsoever. Through some unconventional channels, I tracked down the true owner behind this company. When I saw that name, I froze. It wasn't Henry. It was Sophie. So, it was her all along. Everything suddenly fell into place. Back then, Henry must have forwarded my emails to Sophie. Maybe to show off, maybe to curry favor. And Sophie, this seemingly fragile and harmless woman, possessed extraordinary ambition and cunning. She took my technology and rushed to patent it overseas. She had been waiting for the perfect opportunity all along. Wait until I've expanded the company, wait until I'm preparing to go public, wait until I'm at the highest point, then use this patent to deliver the fatal blow. What she wants isn't money. What she wants is to destroy me. Destroy me, the replacement that makes her jealous and fills her with hatred. Really, what a vicious heart. Standing at the door of that empty office, I felt a chilling coldness rise from the soles of my feet, instantly spreading throughout my entire body. I didn't raise any alarms. I quietly returned to the country and began to lay out my plans. Since Sophie wants to play, then I'll join her in playing a big game. First, I instructed the PR team to issue a public statement declaring that Cresthaven Capital respects intellectual property rights but absolutely refuses to accept any form of malicious litigation or extortion. Next, I had the legal team formally file a response overseas, putting on a show of being fully prepared for a protracted legal battle. This successfully lulled Sophie into complacency. She thought I was cornered with no choice but to fight back passively. She began sending messages through intermediaries, hinting that if I abandoned the IPO and publicly apologized to her, she might consider withdrawing the lawsuit. What she wanted to see was me kneeling before her, begging for mercy like a pathetic dog. Playing along with her scheme, I pretended to hesitate and waver, engaging in hollow diplomacy with her. Secretly, I hired the best private investigator to look into one thing, the truth behind Henry's death. I always felt his death wasn't as simple as it seemed. A man as proud to his core would never choose suicide so easily. Especially not after he'd already lost everything. It defied all logic. Sure enough, before long, the investigator brought me shocking news. Henry's death wasn't suicide. It was murder. And the killer? Sophie. She had tampered with Henry's villa, creating the illusion of a gas leak. Her motive was simple. After being ousted, Henry's mental state had been unstable. Once, while drunk, he confessed to Quentin, he regretted it. He regretted not cherishing me properly back then. He even said he would go abroad to uncover the truth behind that patent and clear my name. He told me he owed me and wanted to make amends. These words were overheard by Sophie. She became frightened. She was afraid that Henry would really uncover the truth, afraid that everything about her would be exposed. So, she went all the way and silenced the witness permanently. After obtaining solid evidence, I didn't immediately report it to the police. I was waiting for the right moment. A moment that would utterly ruin her reputation and leave her with no chance of redemption. On the day of the trial, Sophie made a grand appearance. She wore a white Chanel suit with impeccable makeup, resembling a proud white swan. Sitting in the plaintiff's seat, she looked at me with the triumphant gaze of a victor. The media cameras were all trained on us. Everyone believed this would be an open and shut case. Serena, founder of Cresthaven Capital, was about to fall from grace. As the trial began, Sophie's lawyer produced that internationally registered patent certificate, unequivocally accusing us of infringement. When it was our turn to present the defense, my attorney stood up. Instead of refuting their claims, he submitted new evidence to the judge. An audio recording. On it were Henry and Sophie's voices. Sophie, tell me truthfully, what's the real story behind that patent? Did you take something from Serena? Henry, what are you talking about? I don't understand. That was my own research achievement. Stop lying to me. I know Serena's character, she would never stoop to plagiarism. Tell me the truth, was it you? Enough. Henry. You're still defending that bitch even now. Do I still mean anything to you? Fine, yes, I took her things, so what? She's just a stand-in, what right does she have to own such good things? All of that should have been mine. Mine. The recording finished playing, and the courtroom fell deathly silent. Sophie's face instantly drained of color. She never imagined Henry would have recorded them. But there was more. My lawyer then submitted a second piece of evidence to the judge, a video. The video showed Sophie sneaking into Henry's villa and tampering with the gas pipes. It also captured her making a financial transaction with the coroner who helped her fabricate evidence. The evidence was irrefutable. Sophie completely broke down. She screamed, howled like a madwoman, being firmly restrained by the bailiffs. No. It wasn't me. It was Serena. She framed me. She did it. Yet no amount of excuses could save her now. What awaited her was the harshest punishment the law could deliver. The court ruled in favor of Cresthaven Capital. All charges were dismissed. The moment we stepped out of the courthouse, the sunlight was perfect. Countless reporters swarmed around me. Eric pushed through the crowd, came to my side, and hugged me tightly. It's all over now. He whispered in my ear. I leaned against his chest and nodded. Yes, it's all over. Those who loved me, those who hurt me, those I once loved, those I once hated. All grievances and entanglements have settled like dust. My life has finally been completely reset. Now, I can start anew. I raised my head, looked at the azure sky, and revealed a genuine, radiant smile. Hello, world. I'm Serena. Nice to meet you.